Hello, everyone. It is the mostly civilized caveman here once again. This is another tutorial. This is kind of a step up from what we were doing last time with the aging of photographs. But this one is in a different program. Today we're using the GNU image manipulation program, also known as GIMP. It is a free and open source software and kind of the most complex competitor to Photoshop at the moment. So where Affinity I think is good for beginners, GIMP is where I believe it does kind of start to uh, cater to more complicated processes. And complicated this one will become. It's still incredibly easy, but as you can see in the corner here, there are a lot more layers. So I actually started, or I learned how to do this process a long while back with a graphic I'll be showing on the screen now. And I had told someone that I was going to do this tutorial and then I just didn't. So this is kind of rectifying for that. So right here there is kind of showing you two versions. So the goal here is I'm showing you kind of a book binding that you could use for a printable book or even for like ebook like EPUBs. So the this method, you probably won't need this unless you are trying to make a book and then physically age it, because this does give that aged look. But this is what you're going to use for your standard printing. But we'll get to the difference here in a second. So let's go ahead and move to our blank slate here, where I have all the layers already set up. So first, we're going to go over the cover material. The cover material is, for the most part, going to be really easy to get your hands on. You can go to pretty much anywhere on the internet. I can't share the assets for this one, they're not my own, but everything I'm using here is either from Texture Labs or Pixabay. Both are free, both provide royalty-free images, and you can find them both in the description below. So this is pulled from Texture Labs, and it's already the color I'm going to use. So we're not going to do anything with that. But if I switch to this tab right here, I can actually show you a method to make the same texture that we have right here work with another color. And that is to have your background color, solid color. And then if you use, depending on if you're looking at light or dark, you're either going to use exclusion or difference. And when we turn that on, it changes the color. Now, it's not a perfect match, but it's not going to be with the light shining on it. And you can obviously adjust that however you want. In this case, I think you could even get away with the opacity. So that would be how you would change the color if you wanted to do so. I am not doing so in this demonstration, but that would be how you would. So, next layer is our optional step, which is that bookbind, like coverware that you would see on an old book. The only thing there is I used a texture from Texture Labs with that binding already there, and I pressed divide. And so if we actually turn this off, you can see so this is inverted. Usually it's black and white, but because this is a black background, that doesn't really work. So I inverted it, and then we used divide. And so you get this, where the darks are, you get this kind of white look that looks like book weather. So I'm going to turn that off because, again, not using it here because this is meant to be, again, a kind of cover that you could use for, like, a print journal or even just binding an actual book. But the next layer we're going to look at is another form of weathering. This just kind of adds like grime to the texture we already had, and it's much the same. It is just a grunge layer that I have then inverted and applied divide to. If you haven't noticed, In this case, divide is very much its own inversion. So that's why I inverted this initial picture, because when it was inverted before, or when it was its original colors, it was dark with like white grunge, and that would not work correctly with divide. So when we use divide, we expect it to become lighter. Okay, next layer. This is a layer group, actually, and this is our geometry. This is the geometry that we want to appear on the actual book. Again, none of this is applied. I preset this up ahead of time. You're going to want to know your layout when you do this, and so you're going to want to keep these separate. You could make it in another page, I'm sure, but for this, in this instance, I'm using a bunch of different pieces here that then get applied. So, let's close that back. You're also going to want to make sure these are solid colors that stand out so that you can work with them. Okay, and we're going to make them not a solid color here in a second with this next layer. And that next layer, and this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because so far we've had 2 steps per layer, right? Inverting, inverting, and then blending. Now we are moving on to this, where the layer is a bit more, where it's a bit more involved. So if we turn this on, we see it covers the entire picture. That's not what we want, obviously. That's covering everything, that's covering your content. So how do we fix that? Very simply, actually. We go, and this is specifically for GIMP, the key for Affinity or Photoshop is going to be different, but we go to our geometry group here, and if we Alt and then click the picture, the little thumbnail here, that selects everything within the group. Now we go, and we go to our metal here, and we press this mask button here at the bottom. Make sure that's on selection. If that's not showing up on OBS, I'll add it in post. Make sure that that is on selection. Press add, and there we go. That is all we're doing for this layer. You can do more. Obviously, it's going to depend on your texture, but for the sake of this tutorial, that is all we're doing for our trim, is this gold accent that cuts around all of our geometry. So, next, we're going to add back over this. If you saw in the graphic before, or if you see right here, the book texture is applied over the gold trim as well. Now, this is ironically an optional step if you go with the like color changing, because if I were to drag over our geometry from this to this, and then move our texture up here, it's gonna apply anyways. So this is, if you've already done this, then this step is optional. But if you haven't, then you're going to do it now. And like before, we are going, so it's already blended, right? But like before, we don't want this effect over our entire book cover. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our geometry layer, we're gonna press Alt, or you can keep it selected. I unselected it so you could see the product of the gold trim, but you're gonna go back to this, select it again if you have unselected it, and then we're going to add that layer again. And remember, it's gotta be on selection. And then, when we turn this on, that's the finished book cover. Now, you could add more grime if need be, but for the sake of a like printed book, this is pretty much what you want. You may want it to look old. You do not want to make it. You don't want to take it too far. Otherwise, it's going to not translate well. So, this is, as you can see, the same, and all things considered, it's a pretty easy method to learn. It's one that can be very easily replicated with other effects, with other material that you can just practice with. All right. I will see you guys next time, probably with the GIMP version of the photo weathering tutorial. But for now, that is all. I will see you all next time.